Join us. This is Live with Miami's Community News, and I'm Michael Millen. We have a very special guest today, Nekeshia Williams from the Miami Foundation. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So you are the VP of the Collective Impact Department, if you will, for
Yes.
Miami Foundation. First, tell us about Miami Foundation, and then about Collective Impact and what you do there, and more importantly, why?
Yeah, so the Miami Foundation is our community's philanthropic hub. So we are committed, and what we do is we work with lots of donors and lots of people who have philanthropic intentions and really want to see our community improve. And we then, in turn, help them steer those dollars to nonprofits. So those organizations that are on the ground doing amazing work, trying to ensure that our communities are improving. And so I lead our Collective Impact Department, as you mentioned. And so this was a department that was formed a couple of years ago with the intention of community foundations. Traditionally, money moves through them, right? So there are donors who give money. That money then in turn goes out to the community. But what if we, as a philanthropic hub, were able to bring people together? What if we thought about our resources a little bit more deeply and said, how do we bring people together? That can be policymakers, that can be government, that's nonprofits. How are we being a little bit more strategic about our dollars? How are we going deep with those dollars? And so my team, we focus on a few different issue areas. And so that includes everything from economic resilience to climate and disaster. Most recently, we are starting a Press Forward South Florida chapter, which is all about local journalism. We are focused on arts education. So we have a handful of issue areas in which we are thinking very deeply about what our community needs, how we can leverage our influence and our resources to really have an impact, and who we need to bring to the table to address those issues.
So how does your team grasp about what the community needs?
Great question. And so I would say, one, we are big on keeping our ear to the ground. So one, we continue to stay in contact with every single nonprofit in this community, and then also making sure those nonprofits, they're listening to their people that they're serving. And so I would say, one, it's just making sure that we are in lockstep with the folks that we serve. And so we are continually talking to our partners. We actually have a community advisory committee made up of nonprofit leaders, and so they come together once a quarter to talk about what's happening on the ground. And then in addition to that, we survey our nonprofits. So every single year we survey our nonprofits to understand what's going on. A few years ago, we actually did a full community survey in partnership with Mayor Daniela Levine Cava to understand what were issues. And so I would say we are very big on, one, listening, but then also making sure that we're using data to back up our decisions.
As far as the setup, so you have the Miami Foundation. You get money from other people,
Mm-hmm.
and then you give it to providers,
Mm-hmm.
and the providers then give it to the consumer.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say not necessarily give it to residents, right? But they are oftentimes providing services, and they are activating programs that benefit those residents.
And as I mentioned earlier, when the pandemic arrived here almost 5 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
it's incredible, we saw the disparity in healthcare. It was just so obnoxious and so arrogant and so elitist.
Yeah.
It really was hurtful. And then you realize that there's this frantic behavior. I got to get it now. I got to get it now. And then if you didn't know how to do that, you got left behind.
Yep.
So tell us about how the Miami Foundation is going to keep people from getting left behind.
You know, that is a big question. And I would say it is through the work that we continue to do every single day in working with our nonprofit partners to understand what's happening and how, again, we can leverage our resources. But I want to share with you, when COVID happened, the Miami Foundation did a couple of different things. One, we knew that our nonprofits were hurting. And so in that moment, we worked with some of our partners to make sure that we were providing them with funds to help them sustain. We also provided funds just to make sure that their employees were well. Because at the end of the day, if you were working in a nonprofit back then, which I was, we felt the impact of what was happening on the ground because we were working with the people who were experiencing COVID-19, whether losing family members or having lost their job, not being able to pay their rent. And so the Miami Foundation did a few things. One of which, how do we give these nonprofits money? Because we know that all of a sudden they've lost money, like many businesses did. But then two, how do we make sure that we're giving them some funds to really care for their employees because their employees are caring for a community? But one of the other things that we saw during COVID was the fact that many people who didn't have resources, historically underserved, they could not access the internet. And so the Miami Foundation, we worked with a handful of partners to start what is called Miami Connected. And so through Miami Connected, we were committed. How do we get 100,000 families connected to the internet? And at first, this started off with us just saying, you know what, with our partners, we're going to pay for internet because we know that right now that is what people need in order to learn, in order to work. So how do we simply just pay for the internet? And then the government came along and they had their program. And so we said, okay, we will pivot. There are some folks who don't want to be connected with the government. We will pay. But then there are folks that we then learned we could use our skills and our resources to actually just help get them connected to the government program. And that is an example of how in a moment, there was an issue that was happening on the ground. We heard it from our partners. We heard it, we saw it in the news, and we said, okay, what can we do in this moment? And this program launched quite quickly for us to really be able to figure out how we could support our community, again, in the moment.
When you mentioned you had an idea of 100,000 hookups, how did that figure come into play?
So, wow, I wasn't at the Miami Foundation when we decided on 100,000 hookups. And so I don't know the answer to that question. But we knew that there was a great need in the community. And so I'm going to imagine that we said $100,000. That is what we can pay for. And so we've got the funds to help support 100,000 families. And that's what we went after.
That's wonderful. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Ooh, okay. Third generation Miamian, born and raised in the northern part of the county. I was born and raised in what is now called Miami Gardens. My dad was born and raised in Opa-locka, so the northern part of the county is near and dear to my heart. I live in Opa-locka, so when I recently decided to buy a single family home, I bought there. I believe in the power of community and our individual ability to affect change. And so I would say that who I am is a person who shows up every single day, committed to changing my community in whatever way I can. What that looks like for me is, as you know, I worked at the Opa-locka Community Development Corporation for a while. I was chief operating officer there. I serve on more boards than I have the time for, but I know that it matters in my community. I try to be as informed and as engaged as possible. I organize residents who are committed to change just like I am. And so we connect and we talk and we show up to commission meetings. And I hope to be the change that I want to see in my community. That is one of the things that I hold
remember some lady saying that.
Who said that? I don't even know.
Be the change that you want to see.
Yes.
So, and speaking of change, the Miami Foundation created a new fellowship this year. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So the Saltwater Fellows, it was started earlier this year with the idea that there are lots of issues. Again, going back to these deep issues that are happening here in Miami-Dade County, there are lots of issues.
Can we put their website up on the Michelle? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So there are lots of issues that are facing Black communities in Miami, and we know that Black nonprofit leaders are at the forefront of trying to really help change those communities. But we also know, and so Felicia Hatcher says this, Black leaders are underfunded and over-mentored. And what we wanted to do was really invest deeply in leaders who were at the forefront of change as it relates to racial equity in our community. And so what that looks like is a $100,000 investment in their leadership that is unrestricted. They get to decide however they think it's best for them to use that $100,000 on their leadership journey. And then it is a year-long fellowship in which we're bringing these 10 leaders together to learn from each other, to grow with each other, to listen to other people, leaders in Miami-Dade County who have experienced quite a bit. And so they can learn from them. But ideally, these leaders will go off and do something amazing together, or it just inspires their leadership journey in a different way, and they go off and do something even more amazing than what they're doing now.
So how many fellows are there?
10 fellows.
10 fellows. Is there going to be a new group next year?
We don't know that. Right now, we're focused on the Saltwater Fellowship.
Okay, yeah. That's great. Michelle, could we go to the saltwater part? And then let's find, if you don't mind, Dr. Tina Carroll Scott. There's a bunch of videos. She's my favorite. She's my favorite lady in South Miami.
They're all amazing. Yeah.
Right. Michelle's going to try to find it, and then we'll play it because they're like 1 minute or 2 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and Dr. Scott is a pediatric physician.
Yes.
She takes care of families, not just the individual.
Yeah.
She's certainly taught me that when you take care of that, it's everybody that's connected. So it's not just the immediate family, you have the extended families, the grandpa, the uncles, the aunts, and everything.
Yeah.
So in a second, we're going to have Dr. Scott up on the screen there. Oh, there she is. Can we play that? Can the volume? We can try to get the volume. That's Dr. Tina.
Oh, there she is. South Miami Children's Clinic. It's a nonprofit organization that treats children who are uninsured or underinsured in Miami-Dade County. My clinic, I see a large Medicaid population, primarily African American with a smaller percentage of Hispanic patients. And one of the things that I found early on was that it was really difficult for me to push forth my medical agenda when these families were dealing with so many other life issues, what we call social determinants of health. When a family is dealing with housing insecurity or food insecurity or not having employment, it's really hard for them to focus on their health care. So one of the things that I have been trying to do for my last 17 years being at the
what they had to do and why them.
Yeah. So this process was a little bit different than what we have done with some of our other fellowship opportunities. And so the Miami Fellows is the big one at the Miami Foundation. And so the fellows had to be nominated. So you couldn't just apply and say, hey, I think I'm doing amazing work. Someone in the community had to nominate you first. And then once you were nominated, then you received a link to be able to tell us a little bit more about you. And based on those two different things, one, the nominations, and two, your own description of your work and your leadership journey, we then use that to review it against, the metrics that we had and really score people. And we narrowed it down to, if I'm not mistaken, 15 or 20 people, maybe 20, brought them in for interviews, and we have an amazing advisory council made up of phenomenal leaders here, and they were the ones who made the final choice. So
their mission, your mission, and now theirs with us is to do what?
One more time, ask that question again.
The mission of the Saltwater Fellows and of the Miami Foundation is to do what?
Is to invest deeply in the leadership of Black nonprofit leaders.
Lots of local healthcare facilities have financial issues. You never know when you're in a dire strait. Sometimes you just got to go ask for it.
Yeah,
Dr. Scott. All right, and you never know where that's going to come from. So my hat's off to her and for your team for selecting her. She's my favorite. And well,
you're going to have to get to know the other 9, because let me tell you. Well, first, they're all absolutely amazing, and Dr. Scott is doing such phenomenal work here in South Dade, and so I know why she's your favorite. I want you to get to know the rest of the 9 because they are all doing amazing work all over the county.
By the way, they are all getting letters from us asking them to come down. We have. Refresh me, remember the lady who's going to be here in half an hour.
Do you have the list up there? No, they don't.
Anyway, she's going to be here in a half an hour. That's the beginning of that.
Okay.
And I can't tell you which physician asked us to do that, but you can sort of guess.
That's awesome.
So we're really happy to be able to do that. Rochelle knows Dr. Scott, who's been here, several times. So here you are in your mid-20s, all right?
Oh, I'll take that, yes.
Okay. Really making a huge difference. And why don't you tell us again about your team at the Miami Foundation?
Yeah, so we are a small but mighty team. I think of maybe about 7 or 8 people now, and every single one of my team members is deeply committed to equity, deeply passionate about community, and they all have kind of a focus area that they really hone in on. And so again, economic resilience, climate and disaster, education. And so they are committed to making sure that they know the players, being in community, learning from people, then also figuring out what our community needs in order to affect change.
We know that mental health has been a big issue for decades, and Rosalind Carter tried to bring it out, bring it up from the back. And certainly when I think the Fed said, let's have a mental health day, that made a big difference. Michael Phelps, the Olympic swimmer, when he got on TV, said, listen, when I have problems, this is what I do. And certainly it has helped people feel better about themselves, that it's okay to be broken, all right? You could break your arm and get more oohs and ahs than if your soul is hurting, right?
Yep.
So what is Miami Foundation doing to help the people that are having issues right now?
Yeah, so I would say that we probably aren't doing enough in that area just yet. I mean, we are investing in nonprofits who are leading in that work. But as an organization, when I think about the work that I'm doing from a collective impact space, that is not yet anything that we are focused on. But you're absolutely right that this is a huge issue that our community is facing. It's happening nationwide. The devices in front of us, the devices in front of kids, there's more than enough research that shows that this is a huge issue.
We've worked off and on with NAMI, National Alliance for Mental Illness. Susan Rachel was the volunteer president for many years.
Yeah.
So she's here. She was interviewing her. She said, my son, who had an episode a few years ago, would like to come in and sing. I said, okay. She says, he's getting his master's degree now. Comes in. I said, Matthew, listen, I understand you want to sing a song. He said, yes. So he takes out his guitar. Susan's sitting here, Matthew's sitting over there. He starts singing, You're Not Alone. I'm crying. She's crying. We're both crying. I'm imagining him walking down Biscayne Boulevard with no shoes and no shirt, which I'm sure that happened at some point. And when we can do that and bring it up front, it makes it easier. Former Mayor Alex Pinellas' brother was schizophrenic, who eventually, I believe he died by suicide. Where Alex said, I had the bully pulpit and I couldn't get it done. I didn't know what to do. Yeah. And so what I just asked you to do is try to enable some of those providers to take some time and to spend it in some mental health care, because you never know what's going to happen.
Receive it. Yeah.
During the pandemic, a lady whose son was autistic threw the baby into the water. Somebody saw the baby drowning, rescues the baby, hands it back to the mother. The mother 2 blocks later throws the baby in. So it is not just for the one with the mental issues. It's that whole family unit of frustration and not knowing what to do. Yeah. So I hope that if you're not spending any time, energy, money there, make a little space in there.
Yeah, I hear you.
To do that. We've got a couple minutes left.
Okay.
Now, one of the things I would like you to do is think about people that have helped you along your way. And you can call them mentors, you can call them friends, but people have really made a difference. Yeah. All right? And while you're doing that, when did you know you wanted to live a life like this?
Such a great question. You know, I think I was always raised around community. And so I think when I was younger, it was just in my blood and I didn't maybe realize it. I will tell you, I am the Miamian who left Miami and thought, I'll never come back. This city doesn't really have what I want. We talk about the brain drain all the time. Like, I was that person. I knew that I wanted to be in New York. I lived in New York for many years. I lived in Dallas, and a job brought me back home. And when I came back home, somebody that I knew came to me and said, now that you're home, it's really time to come home. And what that meant was going to work at the Opa-locka CDC. Wow. I had a career in corporate communications that I loved. I knew exactly what I wanted my career to be. And I had it all set out. And in fact, when that person came to me and asked me to work at the Opa-locka CDC the first time, I said, oh no, I'm not gonna do that. I know my career, I'm good. And I knew
I'm with that big phone company. Why would I deal with this little city over here?
Yeah, and I had a great career in corporate America. And so I thought about it a lot. And again, it's something that was always in my blood. And even when I worked in communications at an agency, I was attracted to the things that connected to community. Talk to me, tell me.
When did you know? When you said it was in your blood, when did you know that, more or less? What was that age, more or less?
Maybe 7 or 8 or 9, because it's just always been there. Yeah. And, it's interesting. I never thought that it would take the route that it did, but it was always there.
So one of the things we've recognized, that sometimes there is that conscious awareness of it. Yeah. But before it's the conscious awareness, they had all this other stuff that's going on before you can spit it out. Yeah. So 7 or 8. Yeah. Well, there's not too much time between 0 and 7 or 8. So I want you to, again, think about those people that helped you along your way, whether they know it or not. Would you look right into the blue camera, because Rochelle's going to focus on you, and you're going to talk to those people? Well, hold on one second. She's going to flip the camera over to you. Okay. All right. Whether they're here or they're not anymore. Okay. If you want to refer to them by name, that would be perfect.
Okay. So I'll start off with Ian Abrams, one of my first bosses. I learned how to be an amazing boss watching him lead and watching the way he cared for his people. And I carry that with me to this day. And it is the leader that I am. I will say Willie Logan. I have had the opportunity to be in the back seat as he led. And I learned how to be fierce. And I mix that with who I am. And so how do I be fierce but also kind? And just watch how he maneuvers politically. And so I think that is also something that I continue to learn. I will say my mom. My mom, I have learned to be a kind person because of my mom. And I think lastly, I will add Rebecca Fishman-Lipsey. So I am lucky enough to have a front row seat at her leadership and watch the way she leads, watch the way she cares for community, the way she cares for her people. And so I get the ability to learn from just amazing leaders. And every single one of these people have touched me on my own leadership journey. Wow, I was not ready for that.
Okay. So next thing. What can somebody do in their own particular way to help society be a little bit more balanced in the things that you are doing?
So I personally believe one of the biggest things that you can do is start local. You start local. You clean, and I think the easiest way to put it is like you clean up around your street, right? Like start local, care for community, connect with other people. And I genuinely believe that it grows from there. You start off with, I want to see a light at the corner, or I want to see those cars slow down. And people then start to learn what it takes for that to happen. You connect with people who have the same desires as you, and then you all are all of a sudden thinking about, how do I build together? And that is how community changes.
When you said you start local, that includes starting with your family members.
Oh, absolutely.
And then it's the neighbors.
Absolutely.
And then it's the school or the club at the school.
Yep.
And then it's joining some group that's keeping the street clean.
Yep.
Then you become an anti-litter person, right? And that all grows like that.
Yeah.
So it's wonderful that we have you here in Miami, right? Congratulations on your lifetime of service to Miami-Dade County.
Thank you.
Nekeshia,
Such a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Folks, again, remember, take care of yourselves.